Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you today. If you haven't been watching this series, then you need to go back and watch the first couple videos. But we've been working on this 1971 Bally 4 million BC pinball machine, electromechanical, old school, 1971. And in the first video, we took it all apart, showed everything in it, and what condition it was in when we got it. The second video, we went through the bottom here and fixed all of the relays in the bottom of the machine. Worked on the volcano motor a little bit and the ball count stepper unit, the score motor. And we're pretty confident now that we've got all of that working well, or as good as we can tell, without having a playfield in it. The playfield's missing. Joe, what'd you do with the playfield?
No idea.
Oh man, we lost the playfield. This customer's going to be mad. Hey, he probably will be mad if we don't have his playfield, right?
Better find it.
All right, I'm gonna have to go look for it. But on this video, we'll look around for that. Hopefully by the next video we'll find it. But in this video, we need to work in the back box. So what the thing was doing whenever he brought it in was when you started a game, or when you started the machine, when you started a game, the pop bumper would fire. And then it would just go down and back up like somebody had hit it. And then you would get 10 points on the back box. And it just did a bunch of weird stuff like that. Something was locking on underneath the playfield. And he just had all kinds of weird little issues going on. And so he had a couple people come out to his house, but it's hard to fix something like this at somebody's house just because it takes a lot of time and you got to kind of go through everything and read through the schematics and all of that. So he eventually, he couldn't find anybody that could really spend the time to get it going at his house. So he eventually brought it up here to us and dropped it off, and we've been working on it a little bit and we've been filming it. So go back and watch those videos if you haven't yet. And while you're at it, right here at the beginning of the video, since you know this video is going to be so cool, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. So I'm going to pull this thing back away from the wall, and we're going to mess with the back box. There's a coil burnt up back there. There's another one that looks like it caught on fire and they replaced it. So there's some craziness going on in the back box here, but we're going to work through it and get everything working good again. So let me slide it out from the wall, and we'll check out what kind of condition it's in right now. Okay, folks, so I slid it out from the wall here. I've got it unplugged so I don't electroshock myself. If you hear a noise in the background, there's an arcade game turned on, a fighting game. So nobody's actually fighting in the back of our store. So this is what we're looking at here. I noticed last time 3, 4, 5 problems. 5 issues going on, okay? So the first issue is there is a bell missing from here. That every time it scores 10 points, it should hit this bell. This little clapper here should hit the side of the bell. The bell is missing. So that's one problem. Second problem, that coil there has got some kind of shoddy wiring going on it. Looks like it's fine, but it's been taped. So that might need a little help. It's kind of weird that it's like that. Why did they need to extend the wires? I mean, they have the wires right here. I don't know why they had to go longer with them. They must have just cut them short whenever they took it off. So that's the second thing. The third thing is this relay has caught on fire at some point and been replaced. So we need to make sure we got that all right. That's the 10-point relay. The fourth thing is the 100-point relay looks like it's seen better days. It looks like it's been burnt slapped the hell up too. Okay, and then the fifth thing is the 10-point, this looks a little charred too. Probably because the 10-point relay locked on, which made this lock in. And what will happen, watch, I'm going to show you something. If I pull this in, watch what happens to the actual score reel. Okay, so if this were to lock on, where it was always in, okay, what that would do is it would connect power to here, but it would never release power from here because that would never open up because it's stuck shut. So if it sticks shut, what happens is, watch the score reel. Okay, we're stuck. We're pulled in stuck. So what didn't happen? The reel didn't turn. It's because the reel doesn't turn until it lets go of power. So if you ever get one where the front reel looks kind of weird, like it might even be like halfway in between or something, you might have a problem where your relay's sticking on or something. Okay, so what would make that relay stick on? Well, something on the playfield, like a switch that's 10 points being permanently stuck closed, would do it. So something like that may have happened in the past, and then whoever was playing it when it did that didn't notice it or whatever, but you'd think you'd smell it. You can smell it. It smells like burning paper, and I mean it's a putrid smell. Once it happens to you, you'll understand. So it could have been something got stuck, and it'll buzz too. It'll go and you'll start seeing smoke pour out of the top of it. And you might think, well, why doesn't it blow a fuse? Depends on what happens. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so that's our thing. So these two relays are suspicious. The bell's missing. That one, I don't like the wiring. And this one is suspicious. Okay? Now, you can go in and just fix those things or just look at those things, but to make it reliable, this is for a customer. It's his machine. To make it reliable, we need to go through everything to try to catch problems before they even happen. So we're not just going to fix those 5 things. We're going to fix everything. It's all getting fixed, people. That's what you should do with yours too, by the way, if you get one. And by the way, I've tried to make this point before, but a lot of people don't get it because I don't say it in every video. So most of you understand this, and I apologize for stating the obvious, but this isn't just to show you how to fix a 4 million BC. Any Bally anywhere near this era will look almost exactly like this. And then if you extrapolate it further, any electromechanical pinball will look very similar to this. So if you have any EM pinball machine, this video and what we're going through, if you do the same thing on your machine, no matter what the title is, you'll be able to fix yours. So we do it all in the same order on every machine. First thing we do is we clean everything up, start working on the bottom board, take the playfield out of it. Next thing we do is work on this panel board here. Now all of this stuff kind of works in conjunction with the stuff in the bottom of the cabinet. So it's all the brains of making everything work. Once you get that, then you can move on to underneath the playfield. Once you get that, then you can start doing cosmetics like the top of the playfield and stuff. So if you do that on yours, you'll get it going too. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab the multimeter, and we're going to check these coils to see if they're burnt up with a multimeter. So I'll show you how to do that. Just for peace of mind, we can see if it looks like any of them are shorted. All right, now the way we're going to test it is we are going to test between the 2 lugs on the coil. Now the coil is just a big long wire wrapped around itself thousands of times. So this one is a G30 1500. That means 30 gauge wire wrapped around the spool 1500 times. So one end is right here and one end is right here. So if you check with a multimeter on resistance check, it's hard for me to hold it while I'm filming too, but this one has, it looks like about 40 ohms resistance. Come on, cooperate for the video. Well, you get the point. So what you're looking for, 30 ohms resistance. You don't need an exact number. What you're looking for is, if any of them are below about 2 ohms, they're probably shorted. And that means they're probably bad. This one here that looks all burnt up, I just checked and it's still got 30 ohms resistance. Now the things do not wear out, really. You know, so it's not like that one had 40 and now it's down to 30. It doesn't work like that. It'll have 30 the whole time, and then eventually it'll have 1, and it'll be shorted and it'll blow the fuse. It'll be something like that. It'll do it immediately. And what makes it happen is they get really hot, and then it melts the coating off of the wires, and then 2 of the wires touch inside. So imagine it's wrapped around the spool 1,000, 1,500 times, it says. Okay? So none of that's touching. It's all coated. The only thing that's not coated is the end of the wire where it comes out and touches the thing. So it's just a real long wire. So it would be like if we had, let's see, that's maybe 4 inches around. So that would be like 500 feet. So if I had a 500-foot wire that was 30 gauge, and I laid it on the ground, and it was the other end, it was 500 feet away, and I checked resistance from this end to that end, I would have maybe 40 ohms or whatever it is, okay? It doesn't really wear out or anything. It just gets shorted. So that's what's going on here. If it gets really hot, it melts the coating off of the wire, and then the two of the wires are touching inside. So now the power doesn't, any voltage you send down the wire doesn't have to go all the way to the other end. It just goes about a third of the way and then back or whatever. Or it may go 2 revolutions and then it's shorted to this wire or whatever. So whenever it does that, it starts blowing fuses because you're basically shorting both sides of your AC together. So all you need to understand is if you measure them and they're up above like 2 ohms, they're probably still good. If they're really high, like a couple thousand ohms, they're probably bad. They're probably broken in the middle is what's going on, or something like that. Now, they're in the cabinet with other things hooked to them. So sometimes if something is telling the 10-point relay to turn on, it will measure differently because it's trying to turn it on. So like if the playfield was still in it, if I held one of the 10-point switches, it would probably, instead of measuring 40 ohms, it would now measure 2 ohms or something like that, because it's basically trying to make it pull in. And the way they work is it just basically, whenever the power runs through it, it makes an electromagnet which pulls this plate in. When the plate pulls in, it makes the switches connect. Simple as that. So what did we find out? Both of those coils are fine. That's what we found out. Now, a small chance there's still something wrong with it. I just can't catch with a multimeter, but in general, they are not shorted even though they look bad. Now this one up at the top here, same thing. What are we getting? Come on, work with me. You got to work with me. 28 ohms, that's pretty good. So it's the same thing. It's not down below 2, so it's not shorted. Let me do this one again. Maybe I'll get a better reading this way. That one's got something similar, 28.8 ohms. So even though one coil will be, well, my probe's stuck. Even though one coil may be the exact same part as another one, just depending on what it's wired through in the game and everything, you still might get different resistances. So don't get hung up on having the exact, all of the score reels, the resistances match. It's completely unnecessary. It doesn't matter. And it wouldn't be like that while they're hooked up in the game anyway. Okay, so I think those 3 coils are probably fine. But that doesn't mean that a switch isn't still stuck on, making something always pull in or whatever. The presented problem whenever we got this thing was as soon as you turned it on, the pop bumper would fire, release, and then you would get 10 points. So something's going on with that pop bumper, obviously. And since we've had smoke fire problems before, we really need to work through it and make sure everything's cool. So the very first thing I'm going to do, the thing that I do not enjoy doing, is cleaning all these score reels. There's 20 of those suckers. No, there's not. There's 16 of those suckers. I don't want to do that. It's going to take forever. But there's only 5 of these. Hell, I'll do that. I'll go ahead and clean these. So I'm going to take we use a file. You can use a contact burnisher, but you don't want to use anything real aggressive because you don't want to scratch the coating off of the contacts. But we're going to clean all of these switches and just make sure that when the relay pulls in, if the switch is open, it closes. If the switch is closed, it opens. If you get them all like that, they'll all be working. Okay. So I'm going to go through and clean those real quick. If I run into anything weird, I'll film it for you, and then we'll come back and work on the next part. Okay, folks, so I got those all clean. Everything seems fine. Nothing seemed adjusted out of whack, but maybe one of them was dirty and not touching right. Next thing we'll do is we'll clean these Jones plugs. Show you what's up with that. These are on pretty much every EM. They call them Jones plugs. I've heard people say that that was like a brand, and that these aren't actually Jones plugs because they appear to be made by Williams, Bally, and they're all a little bit different. But it's the same kind of idea. So it's basically just a plug that can unplug. So you have the male part and a female part. Depending on the brand, which company it is, they're slightly different. On these, they're pretty good because they have this kind of spring arrangement where the flat piece goes around and then hits the post when it goes through. So what I like to do is just kind of squeeze them together a little bit better so that they grab the post a little better. Sometimes they're kind of splayed out a little bit, you know. I'm just trying to make sure that whenever the post goes in, that that little clip on the back touches the side of the post as well. You don't have to go cray-cray with it. And then we're going to clean this up just to get them a little shinier. You can just use some really light sandpaper or Scotch-Brite or whatever your favorite thing is. So let me do that real quick, and then we can plug them back in and on to the next thing. Okay, got them all shined up. They're looking good now, people. Now look at this. I want to show you something. This one, I have figured out that this one was built on a Friday. They made one post longer than all the other ones. And it appears to be original. Okay? But, if you look, they're using different sizes anyway. So, like, that long one is the same size as all of these ones. It's just for whatever reason on that one connector, there's one long one and all the other ones are short. Never seen that before, but I have now. You know, it's never too late to learn something new. You can clean the female end of these too with a bore brush. Now, a bore brush is used to clean barrels of certain items, but I can't say that word on YouTube or they will delete my channel. So you'll just have to figure that out. I don't want to have my channel deleted. Okay, so we got our 5 relays. We got those cleaned. We still have our 20 score reels. And then we have the bell, which is new. It looks like somebody's replaced the coil. Even the bell itself might be new. Right. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 stepper units, basically. Now this is the credit unit. The thing's on free play. So I would assume, there's that word again, I would assume that, so that adds credits. This one removes credits. Yeah, so they have moved the switch. Here's how you can put one on free play. See those switches there? That bottom set of 2. See that little plastic post on this reel here? See the little plastic post? Well, when you get to 0, it opens up that switch. But it's not right now because it doesn't touch it. So it's on 0 and it can't touch the switch to open it up. They have simply bent that switch out of the way so that it can never be opened. And by making it where it never opens, the thing never runs out of credits. The only way it runs out of credits is if that switch opens. And so it's as easy as that. Easy peasy. Now this other one, the one on the top, if you go around and you put enough credits on it, there's another post that hits that and opens that one up to make it where you can't put any more credits on the machine because it'll only hold 15 or 20 or 40 or whatever they've got it set at. So the thing is set on free play. Since it's set on free play, basically this entire credit unit is useless. You could take it out of the machine and just put those two wires together, solder those two wires together, and it would never run out of credits. So you don't really have to even get it working right if you're leaving it on free play. This one appears to be working right anyway, with the exception of that switch never opening. Okay. And then another thing, for your knocker to work, this has to work, because what happens is when this, basically, if you win a game or you put a quarter in or whatever, it pulls this coil in, and when it pulls this coil in, this whole assembly goes down and it hits this switch. They call this the end of stroke switch. So when this goes down, it pushes that switch together. That switch, so you just got to credit, that switch connecting is what makes the knocker work. So you do need the credit unit to kind of work for the knocker to work. All right. Not that big of a deal, though. So this one, what I'm saying is this one we don't even have to really work on because it's set on free play. So that means we're down to 3-stepper units. Boy, I went through that one quick, didn't I? Nothing to it but to do it. So let's work on this one first. This is the coin unit. So what this one does is, basically, it controls, if you've got, I don't want to say this wrong because I'll get it all screwed up. It basically has to do with a 4-player game. So that one player, that reset it. So that's 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, 4 player. So it's how many coins you have put in the current game. 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, 4 player. Okay. Now I don't believe that moves the whole game to select the players. I think that the player unit does that, which is this one, the player up unit. This one is just, it determines if you've started a 1-player, 2-player, 3-player, or 4-player game, if you've started one. Okay, so it's important that this works, or you can't play multiplayer. This is the one, too, with the weird switch. Okay, so since we're doing it next, let me get some light on the situation. Same thing as this. When the see the little switch here, that is connected right now. See how when I move the big blade, the little blade moves too? So what you need that to do is when it, so this is a 1-player game, it's reset. At the beginning of the game it'll reset. And so you add a quarter. Now you have a 2-player game. Now you have a 3-player game. And then when you start a 4-player game, it opens the switch. So what is the purpose of that? It's so that if you hit start again, it doesn't try to start a 5-player game because you only have 4 players. So that little switch is a little tricky. It actually opens on the 4th player. I wonder what they call that in the schematics, though. That's kind of a weird one. Let's see what they refer to that as. They refer to it as the coin unit limit switch. That's that one that we were looking at when we were doing the bottom. Just the credit button. And the ways that the start button can work to pull in the credit relay are if the coin unit limit switch isn't at 4. It opens at 4. They don't have that marked, but that's what it is. Or if the game over relay is on, then the start button will work. So if the game has already started, that relay won't be on. If the ball count unit is at 0, it's open, but if it's not at 0, you can start a new game. And the player up unit, if it is not at 0, you can start a new game. So neither here nor there. When it's on free play, it doesn't really matter, because if you start a 5-player game, it doesn't really hurt anything. It just takes another quarter away, of which you have an unlimited supply because it's on free play. So how are we going to service this one? We're just going to clean that switch to make sure those contacts make good connection. And then on this side, we're just going to clean the contacts on the bakelite board. You can pop that spider off. If it's a simple one, You could probably just clean it around it. This one's actually already pretty clean, but we'll clean it anyway just to make it look better. And then we'll put a little bit of synthetic grease on it. So I'll go grab that and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I cleaned that up and I put synthetic grease on it. This is the best stuff. You can get this at the hardware store, or you can order it. It's dielectric, which means that it insulates and conducts at the same time. It's hard to understand, but basically you don't want to put something on there that is going to connect the traces together, because then everything's shorted together. And if there's power running through some of them, you can cause fire and everything else. It's got to be dielectric. That's the secret word. So how do these things work? Well, it has this little spider on it, and as the coil pulls in, it makes this move one way or the other. And if you look on the back, like see this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 7 little fingers all connected together. And so that sucker sits on there like that. Or let's do this one, it's easier. There's 2 fingers connected together. Right? And it sits on there. And so if it's in one position, it's like that. And what are they doing? Well, they're on the same track. And they're connected together, so it's not doing nothing. So this wire is connecting to itself. But if it moves up to here, well, now one of the fingers is touching this wire, and one of the fingers is touching this wire. So those 2 wires are connected together. And then it goes to the next step, and now this wire is connected to this. It goes to the next step, now this wire is connected to this. So it's a way of moving connections. 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, 4 player. So these wires here, for instance, might light up the light. So if you're on a 1-player game, now you're on a 2-player game, now the 3-player light's on, now the 4-player light's on. And it's just a way of them making different things happen. You need movement in the game so that different lights can light up and stuff like that. So put this grease on it so that it travels smoothly. You might be tempted to just put oil on it. Don't do that, it will start a fire. Dielectric, people. If you need any of that stuff, you can always get stuff like that on our website too. If you go to our website, lionsarcade.com, at the top we have a parts page, and we have some stuff like that linked on Amazon. You can click it and go buy it if you need some. Another thing too, Fluke. So the multimeter that I used on the coils is a Fluke. I like them a lot because the reason I like the Flukes, if you'll notice, usually I'm not a parts snob. Like I don't necessarily need the best equipment and all that stuff. So a little, cheap tools to me are just as good usually, depending on the situation. I was born poor, people. Nothing wrong with being poor and not spending a bunch of money on stuff. I know how you feel. But Fluke multimeters are expensive, but they work better than the cheapo ones, because the cheapo ones, when the battery starts dying, the reading will change. So instead of 10 volts, it'll say that it's reading 12 volts and stuff like that, and it just messes you all up. Flukes don't do that. As the battery dies, the voltage, the readings and stuff stays stable all the way down to when the battery's completely dead and the thing won't even turn on. So I really like their design. They have a new multimeter out they're starting to make more cheap ones, basically. So you can get a Fluke now that's like $45 or something like that. Pretty inexpensive. We've got that up on our parts page too. You can go check that out if you want. But anyway, back to the machine. So I'm going to slide that spider back on there, screw it back down, and then we're done with that one. We'll move on to these other 2. Okay, this is the player up unit. Now on some of these, it's better to take the screws loose so you can get to it. They're in there tight. But if you look, if I can get it where it doesn't stick, this one has a similar setup. So see the switch? So on this one, it resets back to 0 and it opens the switch. And then when it hard to do this with one hand, people. Then when it steps in, when it gets to position 2, it closes the switch. So you got to get that working, right? On this one, somebody has shortened the spring a little bit. So sometimes if it's not resetting properly, you can take the spring and make it a little shorter, which makes it a little stronger. I try not to do that if I can help it, but if you have to, you have to. You can also buy new springs from the Pinball resource. If you have to make the spring a little shorter, usually it's because something's binding a little bit, you know, it needs to be cleaned. So on this one, for instance, it all looks pretty clean, but basically, it literally, using the grease might make it where this spins a little smoother to where you don't actually need to mess with the springs. But no big deal. I mean, in worst case, too, like I said, if you had to, you could replace the springs with brand new ones. You can see it's been done on this one, too. That shouldn't really be like that. But if it's working, it's working. Same exact thing, though. I'm just going to take that spider off, clean that up a little bit, put a little bit of synthetic grease on it, make sure everything's adjusted right. Now, oiling it, sometimes, see how these are nylon? You have nylon going through steel. There'll be a little steel bearing there. You don't, or brass or whatever, you don't need to oil nylon because it's by its properties, it doesn't need oil. And if you put oil on it, sometimes it soaks into the nylon and can make it swell slightly, is the old wives' tale. I don't know if that's true or not. The old husband's tale. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they think might happen over a long, long time. So don't do it, they're saying. If you have one where like you can tell that the nylon is binding as it goes through the shaft, usually it's because the bearing is really dirty. Sometimes it'll have like old grease in it. And the bane of all of this kind of mechanical stuff is WD-40. If somebody sprayed WD-40 on it, that stuff dries like gum, and it'll make it where the stuff can't turn freely. So in some instances, you have to take this all the way out to clean it, to clean the bushing, and then put it back. But you shouldn't have to put any oil on it. On this one, see how it has the clock spring? If you were going to take that out, you would have to take this spring off, which is easy enough to do, but what you want to do is count the revolutions. So if I'm taking it apart, it's wrapped around once, it's wrapped around twice, and that's it. So they've got it wrapped around twice. So you want to count how tightly the thing is wound so that you can put it back exactly how it was. Okay? So I'm going to put that back, and then I'm going to clean the spider on the other side, and I think that will get that one ready to go. So I cleaned that, got it all back together. I took the tape off of that, and the wires are soldered behind that, so I just put the tape back on it. You don't really want them where they're just twist-tied together with tape around it, but if they're soldered, that's a good connection. So all that's cool. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So we're done with that one. We are now on to the 16 score reels. Now you might wonder, why are there only 4 on each score when there are 5 numbers? It's because one of them's fake. So that is a fake score reel. If you look, there's even a little bit of a 9 above it and a little bit of a 1 below it. But it's fake. It's a dummy score reel, they call it. So you don't have to rebuild the dummy ones. But you got to rebuild the other 16. It's not really that big of a deal. It just takes a lot of, it's just kind of monotonous. So I pulled some out. We're going to look at this one because it's got all 3 of the switches. So basically, the way they work is it gets a signal, it pulls in, and there's this neat little contraption that pushes the score reel forward. And then there is also this little red, usually they're not red, but this little red bar here that is riding on the bottom of this cam that is attached to the score reel that also spins around. And as that cam spins around, it has an oblong area that makes that little lever move. And so depending on what number you are at, the little lever is touching and opening different switches, okay? So this is how you need to do it. It's on 2 right now, so it's on number 2. So at 2, all 3 of the switches, at 2, the top 2 switches are closed. You can see the other one in there just barely. See, it's open. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now when it gets to 9, that red lever is going to close the bottom switch. 9. So now all 3 of them are closed. And then when it gets to 0, all 3 of them open. So that's how you want them adjusted on Bally's. They're a little bit different depending on the machine. So why does it do that? Well, when it gets to 9, it closes that bottom one, because the next time that it pulses this one and it turns to 0, it also pulses through the switch to the next score reel and turns it 1. So that's how you go from 0, 9. So it's 0, 7, then one more, 0, 8, 0, 9, and then it gives you one more pulse, and it needs to move this one to 0, and it needs to move this one to 1. So that's why that third switch closes. So the top 2 switches are used for resetting the score reels. So at the beginning of the game, the reset relay comes in, and it turns on the score reset relays, which are these, number 1 and number 2. And they start clacking away. Clack, 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 clack. And they're connecting 8 little switches. So one of them is doing these 2, for instance. So it's resetting all 8 of these. And so these turn back around and keep turning 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 and keep turning. And then it opens. Well, the power from that reset relay to this is running through that switch. And so it opens up, and now it's at 0. And it doesn't keep turning. So the reason they do that is because they're all set on different things depending on what the score was. So that reset relay, the score reset relay, needs to keep going until they're all reset. But if it keeps going, they'll never get all back to 0. So once it gets back to 0, this switch opens. So if this keeps pulling in, this doesn't keep turning because the switch is open. The other switch opens because they're all connected together. So there's 16 switches connected together. If any of them are closed, it provides power to the reset relay. Not this one, the main reset relay. So the reason that happens is so that as long as the reset relay's in, it's still trying to reset the scores, and it's still trying to reset the bonus unit and all that stuff on the playfield that needs to reset. So as long as anything is not reset, that reset relay needs to stay in. Okay. Well, the reset relay being in is what keeps these going, doing their thing. Clack, 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 clack. So it needs a way to tell that all of them have reset. So when they're if any of them are not reset, then you will still have power to the reset relay and still have power to this. If they all get back to 0, these will still click away, even though everything's at 0, as long as the reset relay's on. So you may get a situation where your bonus unit doesn't reset all the way back like it's supposed to. Maybe it's trying and it just can't reset, but all of the score reels have reset. So they'll all be at 0, and these things will still be going. It's because the reset relay the main reset relay hasn't stopped because something hasn't reset. So sometimes you'll see where these are doing their thing, but none of the reels are moving. It's because they're all back to 0 already. So it's a little tricky to understand, but once you get it, it makes complete sense. But all that matters is you need to just make sure that the switches are in the right spot when the right number is on the front of the reel. So you got to take these apart, take everything off of them. Now the little board in here, the only thing that's used for is the high score feature, and the one on the first one is used for the match feature. Okay, folks, we got them all cleaned up, every last one of them, all 16 of them. It took forever, but I made it happen. Okay, you can also sometimes go through and look, I still got dirt all over me. You can go through and some of your little Jones plugs connectors. Sometimes it's a good idea to clean those too. So this one is just the jumper for the bell to make it chime on 100 points, 1,000 points, or both, or you can turn it off. And then these are for the high score. It tells you here on this little chart what color wire to plug in where to handle the high score. So you can change the setting. So when I clean them, I always leave it where the reel is not on 0. Of course, the 1 is the fake one. So leave it where it's on some other number than 0. Basically, you want to see if when you that way, whenever you start the first game, you'll see if they all reset back to 0. If they do, then you can be pretty well assured that they're all resetting properly. But if you leave them all on 0, then the second, third, and fourth player ones just don't get tested very often. Okay, so I'm going to plug it back up. We'll set it back down. I got it on this cool little cart. Only reason I did that was just so it's a little higher up in the air, a little easier for me to work on. I'm going to set it back down. We'll plug it in and see if they all reset. Now, hopefully, we'll be done with the back box. Keep your fingers crossed, except for the bell. I have to order that. Okay, so I've got it plugged up. Let's turn her on, see if anything happens. Nothing happened. All of our lights are on. Let's see if they all reset. See what's going on. So the one isn't resetting. Why is that? It's going to be because usually the one and first and second player are reset by the number 1 score reset relay. The number 2 score reset relay usually does players 3 and 4. So there are 8 switches on that reset relay, and it's going. And each one of those switches resets a score reel. So if the one isn't, it's almost assuredly going to be one of the switches on the number 1 score reset relay I don't have adjusted close enough. So it's touching, but not enough that electricity is jumping over it. So let me adjust that a little closer, and then we'll try it again. All right, I was wrong. Actually, the wire had broke. It was still on there, but it was very loose. It was no longer soldered right. So it would actually score because the wire that goes to the coil goes to this switchblade. Well, there's another wire also attached to the switchblade. So if it's scoring, it uses this wire, which is connected to this wire. Bam. If it's resetting, it uses this wire, which is only connected to this wire if the switch is closed. So it would score, but it wouldn't reset. Nice catch. Okay, so I'm going to solder that back on, and we'll try it again. Okay, let's try that one more time. Boy, that's cool, isn't it? All that for that. So it says 1 to 4 can play, so that's 1. Oh, look, the second one lit up. Oh, what? The third one lit up. Very cool. We're getting there, people. Now, I think there still might be some bulbs that aren't working right or something, because the ball in play came on and then went off. And I think maybe that should be lit up. Is there even a bulb there? So I probably need to... Yeah, there's a bulb there. So I probably need to replace some more light bulbs and stuff like that. But I think we're getting pretty far along. We got the bottom done. We got everything in the back box with maybe the exception of the lights done. We're getting there. So next time we'll throw the playfield in and start working on it. Make it look a little more like a pinball machine. But if you want it to work long term, you kind of got to go through and do all this stuff. Like, are we going to have any more score reel problems? Probably not. I went through every little thing on them. Right? Get it done out of the way. You don't have to worry about it again. And it hasn't been done since 1971. It lasted 50 years, people. 50 years is a pretty good run. So maybe we'll get another 50 years out of it before, after this. I'll let you know. I'll probably still be around 50 years from now. So maybe they'll bring it back to me. I'll be retired by then. Maybe I'll just do it for the hell of it. For old time's sake, 50 years from now. What do you think? So I think that'll do it for today. Make sure to leave us some comments below. Give us a thumbs up. We'll see you on the next video where we work on the playfield a little bit. And have you heard about my brother Donnie, who is my real brother here on YouTube? He has a channel as well. It's our brother channel. My brother Donnie, go check it out. The link is down below. If you like watching us work on old pinball machines, you might like watching me and my brother Donnie my brother Donnie and I work on old buildings. That's what we've been doing lately on his channel. So go check that out. And we will see you on the next video. I hope you've enjoyed it so far.